Look, I think people knew that something would have to happen given the number of cases we saw in the last 2 or 3 weeks. There was a sort of inevitable feel about it to a certain extent. But at the same time, I sort of, maybe it's the rainy day that we had and it's, it's such a difficult time for everybody. I felt that people were a little, I guess angry might be too strong, but maybe just sort of, they've just had it. Quite frankly, I think everybody just wishes that it would be September, October now. I think that it's a very difficult time for Japan.
Could it also be the timing? It's really quite significant and comes so close to the start of the Games, with authorities and officials really waiting to the last minute to declare this.
Look, I guess everybody's got a very big job. Managing the whole process has been very difficult for a number of different groups within that. But I guess, America calls the shots to a certain extent in terms of the timing of the Games. It had to be now. The broadcasting rights are obviously very important. It's meant that people have had to go ahead with something that perhaps we could have spent the energy fixing the pandemic and the issues that are faced by so many small businesses and individuals throughout Japan. So, it feels inevitable. It feels probably what people want, actually. I think too many people moving around means that Japan could be in terrible times in 2 weeks to 3 weeks.
I was going to ask, Melanie, do most residents support this move? How bad is the COVID situation there at the moment?
Look, we're walking around with masks. I've been vaccinated in Australia when I was there recently, so obviously I feel fine. But I do, we wear the masks because it's the right thing to do, and everybody's socially distanced and what have you. But the number of cases are creeping up, close to 1,000. It's still quite hard to get a test here, so there's probably hidden numbers. And of course, what they've seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks is the number of people in their 40s and 50s who've been, having to be admitted to ICU and the like. So I guess there's a sort of a feeling on the part of the government and perhaps the various Olympic groups that it's just too dangerous to let it go. It's too frightening a circumstance to imagine that those numbers would get to a point where we wouldn't be able to control them.
And of course, we've been reporting on how the majority of citizens don't actually want the Games to go ahead, and you briefly mentioned it before, how people just want it to be over with. But in the final weeks of preparation, is that still the case, or are people's minds changing?
I think everybody's just so concerned about the pandemic, about getting vaccinated, about the supplies that are available, about what happens to support them with their business. Everybody would love for the athletes to do their best and for everybody to be enjoying that incredible feeling that people tell me happens at Olympic Games. But we're in the middle of a pandemic and people are very worried about their relatives, themselves, their businesses. And I think, first things first.
Does it look likely that there will indeed be a ban on spectators now? And how much do people in Tokyo care about this?
I mean, I've seen some lovely stories of people who've, waited and waited and waited for these tickets, and they want their children to go and they want to be part of the Games and the atmosphere and everything. But, I heard somebody say this afternoon that if people in Japan can't go to their grandchildren's sports events, if they can't go to school trips, if they can't attend normal things that they might as residents, then why, in fact, should the Olympic Games be allowed to go ahead in any case? So I think the pressure has been felt by a lot of people for a long time. And as I say, the average Japanese person, I think, really wants the athletes to do their absolute best here. And it's not a thing about the athletes, it's just about health.
Of course, and as you mentioned, businesses have been affected. Several must be disappointed also that there won't be as many people visiting during the Olympics as expected, but they're also affected by the pandemic anyway.
Indeed. Japan's been doing a terrific job in encouraging people to come and visit, over the last 5 years or so. And I think the Olympics were going to be that moment where everybody enjoyed it. I was personally very excited about what the Paralympics would mean for Japan and for change. And then suddenly it sort of dropped. But at the same time, people are quite, I think Japanese people are quick to understand that it just can't be. It's a great pity. But it's not that it's been put off for no particular reason. It's been put off because of a pandemic. So people understand that it's difficult, but for business and for all of those companies that have put their heart and soul into this, it's obviously absolutely devastating. But what's devastating, perhaps even more, is the long-term nature of these so-called state of emergencies, which mean that there's a great deal of pressure on business to keep their doors closed at times when they should be open and having people enjoy themselves. So it's a tough time for Japan.
Indeed. Just a final question, Melanie. No doubt the hype would be toned down given that the pandemic is going on. What does the city look like? Are there signs adorning the streets that the Olympics are on? Is there much TV coverage?
Yeah, I mean, we saw the athletics the other day where all the young people were being chosen for the team, and there's great joy, of course, at, at what might happen and how well Japan might do. There are flags out and what have you, but, I guess it's not what we all imagined. It doesn't look in any way what I thought it would look like at this time. But, I guess the ministers today and the government were encouraging people to enjoy the Olympics from the comfort of their lounge room. That's sort of cold comfort, but it's probably the best that we're going to do this time. So we'll just have to see what happens next time, and maybe Japan will get another chance, but it might not necessarily want it. I think people need to look at what the Olympics means and what our leaders accept of us or put forward as sort of ideas for why these things go ahead.
It has been a long drawn-out affair, hasn't it, given the Olympics were supposed to be held last year. Well, Melanie, always good to talk. Thanks so much for your insights.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.